While diabetes may not be a daily part of everyone's life, it is guaranteed that every individual in a developed country has been around a diabetic at some point in their life. Personally, I grew up with a teammate who was diagnosed as a type 1 diabetic while we were away at a ski race. Having known her before being diagnosed, during diagnosis, and now in her current daily life, I have seen how the cost of artificial insulin has a large impact on her and her family. The extremely high cost of insulin fits every aspect of what a global health awareness campaign needs to be effective, especially in Brazil. Although I won't be covering this in my presentation, Colorado Governor Jared Polis recently passed a law that capped the price of insulin at $100 copay per vial. It is important to note that while prices continue to rise, efforts to lower the cost and make diabetic healthcare more affordable through social movements and acts of Congress are currently underway. Insulin is a hormone made by the pancreas that allows your body to use sugar, also known as glucose, from carbohydrates in the food that you eat for energy or to store glucose for future use. For individuals with diabetes, their pancreas does not make insulin, which puts them at extreme risk for ketoacidosis. Patients use glucose monitors to check their blood sugar before and after meals, before and after exercise, and as needed. While the total cost varies, a pack of 100 test strips and 100 Lancets ranges from $60 to $100. If a patient tests their blood sugar when they wake up, before every meal, after every meal, and before bedtime, they will use 14 test strips and 14 Lancets. You can see how the costs stack up on a daily basis. Since the body cannot produce the hormone for them, they must exteriorly inject it into their bodies in order to stay alive. However, everything must come at a price, and this is a life-saving hormone that comes at a very expensive price. Based on a study done by William Cephalou and colleagues, a single vial of insulin ranges from $278 to $400. Regardless of how little the patient uses out of the vial, it must be thrown away after 28 days as it expires and becomes ineffective. Now, to dive deeper into why these tiny vials cost so much. Between 2002 and 2013, insulin prices have tripled, according to the American Diabetes Association, and many individuals are facing the choice of buying a medication that keeps them alive or paying rent to keep a roof over their heads. According to a 2018 article from US News, the insulin industry is monopolized by the fact that generic products cannot be produced off of the name brand distributors for 2 years. Within those 2 years, the producing company can charge consumers whatever amount they so please, hence the extremely high costs. This issue does not discriminate as it affects all diagnosed individuals, regardless of race, gender, culture, economic status, or even geographical indication. The rising cost of insulin affects all individuals diagnosed, but for the purpose of this campaign, I will focus on those who reside in Brazil and belong to a low socioeconomic status. According to Ohio State University, the socioeconomic inequalities in Latin America are so great due to the endemic poverty and diseases, lack of political inclusion, and deprivation of state benefits and resources. While poverty does not cause diabetes itself, the reaction to poverty can influence an individual's susceptibility to diabetes greatly. Additionally, those who are in a lower socioeconomic class are typically unable to afford health insurance or any health care whatsoever. In a research study conducted by Alberto Barcelo and colleagues, their published research, The Cost of Diabetes in Latin America and the Caribbean in 2015, Evidence for Decision and Policymakers, states that those residing in Brazil are spending upwards of $17,000 on the lower end in direct costs and $37,000 on the higher end for total costs to treat diabetes seen in this table. With that being said, 2.6 million Brazilians are considered living in poverty, and 6.5 million Brazilians are at high risk for living underneath the poverty line at $1.90 a day. The economic burden that diabetes, both type 1 and type 2, imposes on the residents of Brazil who belong to a low socioeconomic class is tremendous, and prices continue to rise. It is obvious that individuals will continue to suffer, if not suffer more, should policies not be made against the rising cost of insulin. Additionally, if the economic inequality gap continues to widen, the ability for those who are diagnosed diabetics may face the choice of the life-saving drug, insulin, or a roof over their heads. In order to spread the word about the rising cost of insulin and the effects it is having, I plan to create handouts and table in high-populated areas. Although it can be a slow-moving process, it is imperative to gain a following in order for government officials to realize that citizens are actively pursuing change. This is a handout that I will be distributing to the Brazilian people to get their attention regarding the crisis of rising insulin prices. I will pause momentarily for you to read it. This is another handout I will be distributing. I included the statement about having to choose between being able to feed one's kids to reach the reader's empathetic side. Getting the reader to connect to the handout, which they can further connect to their own personal lives. While they may not be directly affected, they care for family and friends who are. I will pause momentarily for you to read it. So what is currently being done? How are people changing the rising cost of insulin? Is the answer more affordable healthcare laws? Should insulin producers be regulated more? Should the government provide assistance to diabetics who are below a certain poverty line? Consider the American Diabetes Association campaign, Stand Up for Affordable Insulin. Their campaign is driven by a petition of signatures for the access and affordability of insulin. Let's watch a short video about their campaign.
In spite of the incredible advances we made in the science of diabetes and in the technology for its management, there are still a lot of issues that need to be addressed. One of these, for example, is the cost of medications that treat diabetes, and notably insulin. The cost has become extraordinary.
I've been essentially using the same insulin for 16 years, yet the cost has gone up 500%. It's the same insulin. Nobody's been able to explain to me why it's gone up 500%, and I've asked 100 times.
We've seen the cost of insulins go up through the roof, and when you have type 1 diabetes, you need insulin to live. That may or may not be a real barrier to your self-care.
I need insulin to survive. But I remember when I was in graduate school, my prescription coverage, I got $500 a year in prescriptions. And so I was paying cash for insulin every month after January, because January I maxed it out. And that was scary.
I know when insulin first came out, the people who made it did not make it to make money. And now it feels like maybe that's the point.
We can deal with this problem. We can. It's within our domain. We need to deal with this.
Insulin's for everybody.
The Brazilian people would benefit from lower insulin costs, as they are already trying to stay afloat in their daily finances of living in poverty. Individuals diagnosed with diabetes deserve the right to affordable medication and should not have to choose whether they would like to live or die, choose whether to pay rent or buy insulin, choose to feed their children or buy insulin. My name is Haley Cutler. Thank you for listening to my campaign.